You know, when we think about history, our minds usually go to these epic battles, grand, sweeping decisions. But the truth is, sometimes history turns on moments that are just weird and, honestly, kind of petty. So let's dive into some of the absolute strangest endings history has to offer.
All right, so think about it. How do most kings die? What's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably something dramatic, right? A heroic last stand in a massive battle, or maybe just peacefully passing away old and gray in a giant fancy palace. And yeah, those are totally fair assumptions. That's usually how it goes. But every now and then, history just decides to throw a massive curveball. Take the King of Sweden back in 1771. His story ended in a way that, trust me, nobody saw coming. And it had zero to do with war or disease. Okay, so let's meet our first historical figure, King Adolf Frederick of Sweden. Now, this guy wasn't exactly famous for being a brilliant strategist or a political mastermind. Nope. His claim to fame was his appetite. It was legendary. And on one particular day, that very appetite was about to seal his fate. So, picture this. It's February 12th, 1771. The king sits down for dinner, not knowing it would be his last. And man, what a meal it was. We're talking lobster, caviar, sauerkraut, smoked herring, the works, all washed down with plenty of champagne. You'd think that's a pretty solid feast, right? Well, for him, that was just the appetizer. Because after all of that, he was still hungry. He had room for dessert. But he didn't just order, a single slice of cake. Oh no, he ordered 14 servings of his absolute favorite dessert. I'm not kidding, 14. So what was this dessert that he needed 14 of? It's called a semla. And let me tell you, this is no light little pastry. It's this super rich bun stuffed with cream and almond paste, and it's traditionally served in a bowl of hot milk. It's incredibly decadent, and he polished off all 14 of them. Well, later that night, the inevitable happened. His digestive system just gave up. It completely failed. And today, he's not remembered in Swedish history for any great laws or battles. He's known by one simple and pretty brutal nickname. It's a wild reminder that a crown can't save you from, well, yourself. Okay, so a king eating himself to death is pretty wild. But if you think that's absurd, just you wait. Let's jump back to 1325, to a war that wasn't fought for land or money or even religion. It was fought over a bucket, a plain wooden bucket. So back in 14th century Italy, you had these two rival city-states, Modena and Bologna, and they hated each other. Things were always tense. But one night, some soldiers from Modena decided to really stir the pot. They snuck into Bologna and stole a wooden bucket right out of the city's main well. As you can imagine, Bologna was absolutely furious. They demanded the bucket back. And Modena's response? Pretty much, make us. And I just want to be crystal clear here. We are talking about one single wooden bucket. This wasn't some priceless artifact or a holy relic. It was just a bucket. But to these guys, that bucket became everything. It was the ultimate insult. So what happened next? Well, things escalated fast. Bologna declared all-out war. The two cities gathered their armies for what would become the Battle of Zappolino. And get this, we're talking about more than 30,000 foot soldiers and 2,000 cavalry. This turned into one of the biggest battles of the Middle Ages. For a bucket, the human cost was just devastating. Over 2,000 people died that day, fighting in the mud. Think about that. More than 2,000 lives gone. And the whole thing started because a few guys stole a piece of wood. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around. So after all that, who won? Modena did. And to add insult to injury, what's the one thing they did? They kept the bucket. It went from being a prank to a full-blown trophy of war. And the craziest part? You can still see that bucket today. Seriously, it's on display in a tower in Modena. It's been there for almost 700 years, a permanent monument to what might just be the single pettiest war ever fought. So you've got a king who died from dessert and a war fought over a bucket. I mean, these stories sound made up, right? But they're absolutely true. And they give us this incredible peek into the weirder, more human side of how history actually happens. So what's the big takeaway here? What can we really learn from a king with a sweet tooth and a stolen bucket? Well, it shows us that history isn't always about grand strategies and noble causes. Sometimes it's about what happens in the dining room or a public square.
It's driven by stuff that's all too human, like pride and greed and, well, just a really big appetite. It kind of makes you think, doesn't it? What little, seemingly meaningless thing happening right now is going to end up in a history book hundreds of years from now?